Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of ICT's Counter-Terrorism Today podcast during the coronavirus. I am Itai Hanman here with you, as always, bringing you another wonderful episode of the Counter-Terrorism Today as we continue to examine the effects of the coronavirus on national security and different industries that have an effect, a roundabout effect or secondary effects to national security. And we've examined many different industries over this series. We've looked at journalism, we've looked at academia, we've looked at practitioners. And now we are going to be joined by a very special guest. We're going to be speaking a little bit about how prisons have been affected by COVID-19, both around the world and specifically here in Israel, and how that affects national security when it comes to national security inmates and or terrorists. And we have a very special guest, as I mentioned, joining us today via Zoom. It's retired Lieutenant General Orit Adato. She's an associate at the International Institute for Counter-Terrorism. She is the former commissioner of the Israeli Prison Service and the first international vice president of International Correction and Prison Association. As well, she is the owner and managing director of Adato Consulting Limited, an international consulting services on prisoners and prisons in general. Lieutenant General Adato, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. And how are you?
I'm doing very well. It's tough to be quarantined like this. Well, not full quarantine anymore, but still need to be very cautious and leave the house only really when it's necessary. But we make do and we continue to try to strive and go forward and do our daily work and our tasks as best we can, especially over the online services that have been provided these days. And so this is how we get to speak to you now, is via Zoom. And I hope that you and your family are doing well.
I am, and I am at the risk population, you know, my age. What can I do? I'm retired.
Fair enough. And glad that you are staying safe and healthy. Maybe you can give us a little bit about a bit of background for our viewers and our listeners. What does it mean to be a security prisoner, for example? Because there has to be a difference between how a security prisoner is housed, where they are housed, versus I guess, a street level criminal, if you will, a bank robber.
Penal inmate, you mean? I assume
Yes.
that you mean. Well, of course, there are differences. You know, in the entire world, or most of the world, they are being considered as terror inmates. In Israel, there is a specific definition which calls security inmate, which is a kind of administrative definition to assist the prison service or the correctional system to deal with them in a different way. What are the differences between them and the others? First of all, they are being kept separated from the penal inmates. In its principle, they are keeping among themselves and not with penal inmates. So this is the first difference. Most of them are in different prisons. Some of them are in different wings in the same prisons where there are also, I would say, penal inmates at the same time. The differences, or let's say the most important difference between them and the penal inmates is the connection with the outside. While penal inmates usually, not in these days of the COVID-19, but usually do have the right for, I would say, family leave or leaves that they are going through an assessment, risk assessment, and a lot of a very long process. But when they are declared as not risky and there isn't risk for them, and they can go for a home leave to meet their families, to be with their families, it begins with few hours. It can get up to 48 or sometimes even 79 hours.
So that's a furlough, correct?
Yes, furlough, leave. Okay, furlough.
No, I just want to clarify to understand. That's all.
Yeah, sure. Regarding the security inmates, they don't have it, of course. They are not allowed because, of course, the vast majority are Palestinians from the territories, West Bank or Gaza Strip. If you will let them go out of prison, there is no chance that they will come back. Different from the penal inmates that are serving their time and getting back to the community. So they are being prepared to get back to community by one of the ways is these furloughs that you have that we have spoken about. Another difference is it has been for many years. It's changing a little nowadays. They were not given phone calls, public phones, to speak with their families because this was one of the ways of them operating from prison, trying to connect with their what we call soldiers or commanders or colleagues from the past. And therefore, just in specific occasions of family, either a disaster or something happy, a wedding or something like that, they were able to speak in a public phone while people were monitoring what they were saying, of course. At the last year, there is a change, and they are getting phones in their specific wings. Of course, that should be monitored by the security organization in Israel. They do, but let's say that they are not getting any rehabilitation process. Why? Because to be rehabilitated, you first have to acknowledge that you have done something wrong. Because otherwise, what do you need to rehabilitate from? So as long as they say, no, I am a warrior, I am a freedom fighter or whatever, not only here, but all around the world, you cannot go through a process of rehabilitation because to be rehabilitated is mean that I'm correcting something that I've done wrong in my, when I committed an offense. And then I'm preparing myself to get back to community as a law obedience and productive citizen. So if I can say these are the major differences between how they are being kept and the penal inmates in Israel. As speaking about the world, there is a discussion all over the world, and I'm participating lately through Zoom in different discussions whether they should be separated from penal inmates or being spread out among penal inmates. Of course, people who says that they should be separated say we put them all together, separate them from penal inmates so we can supervise them on one hand, and on the other hand, they are not influencing and radicalizing penal inmates. So we are not encouraging others to become radicalized. Those who says, no, we want to put them, assign them with other penal inmates, think that they might be influenced by the penal inmates. So they might be de-radicalized by putting them with other inmates.
So the argument is who's going to influence who more?
Yeah, and definitely the influence goes mostly on one way, radicalizing, not de-radicalizing. But it's a debate. It's a debate, it's a discussion. And if you decide to put them among other penal inmates, as to my opinion, you should classify each one of them separately and then put him in a specific wing or place when there are no vulnerable inmates that might be radicalized by him. You have to supervise, step by step what he's doing on surface and a little bit below surface, meaning very strong, professional, systematic intelligence system. And it's not only that, but you have to prepare the community outside to be part of the, let's say, rehabilitation process or de-radicalization process, So when he will be released, outside there will be something ongoing or maintaining some of the process, and the family and the community should again acknowledge from the very beginning that he has done something wrong. Otherwise they will be able to participate in a kind of rehabilitation process or de-radicalization process.
It's
Just you
very
know, for the first question, a long answer.
a very interesting answer, and I appreciate the explanation because I think a lot of people don't understand or know about the debates that are being had about how to house inmates and where they should be and how a terrorist inmate should be housed and what do the prisons role in a rehabilitation or b security of the outside population from these terrorists and inmates, be it from their ability to control things from the inside, as you said, through phone calls, or even just influencing other inmates that then can be released in the future and influence other people as well.
To make it more interesting, I'll tell you that there is a new, as to my opinion, huge challenge nowadays because, you know, smuggling mobile phones is an international phenomena. It's not only here. Every correctional system try to do the best to prevent it from happening. But as for my international experience, it is something that happens all around the world. But let's say that about 15 or 20, 15 years ago, it was only a mobile phone. You could speak with the outside or write some SMS or something like this. During the last decade, it became a kind of a small computer with its own way to own connection to internet or whatever. But and that's also something that people know and correctional system knows and trying to cope with. But the new challenge, which is going to be more, I think, dangerous and risky for the system, is the fact that nowadays, if you have the abilities, if you are sophisticated enough, as let's say that they are, maybe not all of them, but there are even few, it's enough, that can use a kind of cyber attack from that specific, you know, mobile phone or outside to someone who will do that and can jeopardize security, can jeopardize systems. I don't want to give them ideas, you know, but it is really something that systems should be aware of and prepare themselves to cope with, because it's a brain, you know, it's a brain war. Always someone is initiating something and the other side is doing, making the solution for that, and then come the next phase, and then it never ends. So regarding intelligence, and I said it before, a systematic, very professional intelligence within prison systems or correctional systems has to be prepared for that and to work, of course, along with other law enforcement agencies and security agencies, how to deal with that. I don't want to think about the situation that in a prison, you know, not in Israel, of course, not in Israel, but somewhere in, I don't know, Latin America, and someone will be able to open in, you know, through the cyber, all the cells at the same time, all the doors at the same time. I will not be happy to be the warden of that specific prison. And this is something that we should be looking and finding solutions to the situation that might be. Not speaking about other systems in prisons, you know, I
The,
don't want to elaborate too much about it.
for sure. And the scenario just outlined seems like a story right out of Hollywood, like a movie almost, where someone would be able to uh, override the system and unlock all the cells and doors and open everything up. And it's been portrayed in movies and television before. It's not out of the realm of possibility. And with today's technologies, these aren't out of the realms of possibility. Something you mentioned that's very interesting, and I know it's been debated about multiple occasions, different conferences around the world, is the intelligence in prison services and the intelligence within prisons to begin with. I know that Israel takes it extremely seriously, especially the Israeli prison services, the way they collaborate as well with the national security services, be it the police, the Shin Bet, even the Mossad if it had to, and the government national security apparatus. There is constant contact, constant information sharing, learning lessons from previous times to understand how to better control it. And another thing that has been implemented, and I know that other prison services have come to Israel to examine and see how it works, is the fact that Israel even separates the terrorists based on their affiliation. So Hamas terrorist is in a Hamas wing almost, PFLP terrorist is in their own wing, Islamic Jihad. They don't even mix too much from a perspective of we don't want rivalries breaking out within the prisons, issues like that. And there's also someone designated, almost a leader within that group of inmates, that speaks on their behalf to the prison services. And this goes hand in hand with the intelligence and has to have been born out of a need for gathering intelligence on these types of inmates. Could you explain a little bit about the Israeli prison intelligence system in the sense of its importance, its need, its necessity, and how come it's not copied around the globe?
Well, let's begin with a major sentence that would say that as a commissioner of prisons, or commissioner or head of correctional system, intelligence system is the most important management tool you have. First, to prevent things from happening, and not only inside prisons, but outside prisons. And secondly, of course, to investigate what has happened, if it has happened before. It's really a management tool. It's not, espionage and things like that. No, it is a management tool in all levels, from the very first level of the wing commander, the warden, the regional commander, and the commissioner of prisons. It gives you information. What intelligence is doing is gathering information, analyzing it, and bringing you potential trends. What are the challenges that you are facing? What will be the next challenges that you are facing or you will be facing? And then for the decision maker, as the head of the organization, you can get the, as you believe, of course, the best solution or the best decision up according to the challenges, of course, and the circumstances and everything. So intelligence is a management tool for correctional system, not only for terror inmates, also for penal inmates. You can get the picture of people or organized crime gangs, or even heads of organizations, or even other inmates. First of all, about the risk that they are facing in prison, the risk that they might face outside of prison if they will when go to a furlough, when they will go to a furlough, if at all, of course, how risky they are to other people outside, how to assign inmates, not with his rivals, or on the other hand, with his colleagues, where to put him or her, mostly him. Fortunately, it's mostly him, not her. And so it's really a way of working. It assists you with decision if he can go to study something or go to work to this factory or another factory. Is he risky or not risky? And vice versa, is other are risky for him, and etc., etc. So this is the basic assumption. It's a management tool. Secondly, of course, when we are talking about terror inmates, it's an essential need for security organization and law enforcement organization to get the information, to analyze, and to share. Because if you don't share the information, the intelligence that you have in your system, sometimes it's not relevant for you. If you gather information and analyze it and realize that nothing is going to be in your prison, but someone is planning to do an operation outside, if you will not deliver the information, share it with the relevant organization, you haven't done your job, and vice versa. sometimes from the outside, the prison service get information on something that's being planned. For example, his colleagues from the outside, and I'm speaking now, on penal inmates, for example, that if he will go to a furlough, he will try to escape from Israel. This information comes sometimes from the police or other organizations. So the need to exchange and to share and to work systematically together is essential. As for your question, whether it is being adapted by other countries, I would tell you that about 20, 15 years ago, it wasn't that progress intelligence system in many of the countries, because they thought that when you close the door or the cell, they are inside, you solve the problem. No, you haven't solved the problem. You solved one problem, but it might be the beginning of another problem. So let's say that pocket intelligence, all of the systems has, because you know what I mean by pocket intelligence, meaning things that are relevant for here and now. This is something that even you don't call it intelligence, you do it on a daily basis. You look outside, what is the weather, you decide what you're gonna wear, you decide what will be your, that's pocket intelligence. But to get to acknowledge that a systematic intelligence system is important for you, A, to manage the system, B, to prevent things, bad things from happening, is something that you have to acknowledge, first of all, that you don't know anything. And leaders don't really want to say, I don't know. I don't know. No, no way.
They know
You may,
everything.
no, of course. And even if I don't know, I know.
Of course.
So first of all, you have to be a bit modest and acknowledge that you don't know anything. And you need the professional people to assist you with getting to know more. You will never know everything, but you will know more and more, and you will be able not to collect the information by yourself, but get the information analyzed, and then you will decide the right decision. I can tell you that Australia is very progressed in intelligence. Nowadays, even in Europe, in Britain, and even in Europe countries, it has been changed. I remember myself when I retired and I began to speak loud and clear, hey guys, you have terror inmates, you have radicalization in your system. At the beginning, they said, we don't have any problem. We walk and talk, we know what's going on in our prisons, there isn't a risk. And there are some countries that, looking backward on the issue of intelligence, bring them, to think East Europe mostly. That's something we don't want to have. Intelligence has a bad connotation, negative connotation. No, we are not talking about espionage. We are not talking about, dark people who are good. No, we are talking as a management tool to deal with what you have. So it has been changing. But I would say that the most important challenge that they are facing is the interaction and the connection and the interface between the different organizations, law enforcement and security organization, to say loud and clear, we need each other. It's not that we are doing you a favor, giving you some information, and just because I know you in person, the head of that organization and the head of the other. No, it is important. It is part of our job to be interacted, to share information, and to prevent things from happening.
No, it's very interesting. I think it's completely imperative that intelligence is gathered within the prison systems, just for the daily management of the prison, as you said, but also for prevention of harm to anyone in or outside of the prison itself. Something I wanted to ask you, because I find it interesting, and maybe it is financial, cultural, systemic, not sure what the difference or the reason behind it, or maybe I'm just not informed and you'll be able to inform me better. But In the United States, for example, they have what's called a max security facility. One of them specifically is the ADX Florence facility out in Florence, Colorado. I bring it up specifically because it houses many foreign terrorists, but as well as domestic terrorists of the United States in this prison. There's even a specific section called Bombers Row, where you have the Unabomber, you have the Boston Marathon bomber, you have the Oklahoma City bomber, multiple domestic Al Qaeda supporters and terrorists, all in this one section. There is also espionage traders, organized crime figures. It really is a who's who of maximum security prisoners. When I come and look up Israel and prisons and whatnot, I did not find a similar prison to that one. And by similar, I'm not even talking about construction and whatnot. I'm more talking about operationally, in the sense of those prisoners that I just mentioned are on 23 hours a day isolation within their own cells. That is not something I have seen, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, that is done here in Israel, where max security prisoners or security prisoners are being held in an isolated cell for 23 hours of the day. The question really comes down to what system works better. Is there better prevention when the inmate is isolated from anyone and everyone for 23 hours a day? Or is it better that they're housed 5 or 6 people within a cell together? They're all Hamas operatives, for example, and friends from the outside, friends from the inside. I'm sure there's pluses and minuses to both, but I'm trying to understand why security prisoners of that nature, both Hamas or Al Qaeda in the United States and in Israel, are being treated very differently.
Okay, let's begin with the fact that the system in Israel and the United States is totally different. In the US, there is 3 levels. There is the federal, there is the state, and there is the county. Here we don't have it. It's a national correctional service or prison service that holds them on. So this is the first difference. In the US, the federal is relevant for any federal offender. It doesn't matter where you come from. And the states have different rules, different laws, and they have their own laws, so it's totally different. In Israel, I would say, first of all, it's one system. Secondly, there is a separation between penal inmates and terror inmates. Israel is very small. Everyone knows everyone. In the States, when you put people in a prison, in a federal prison, most of them haven't heard about each other ever. In Israel, it's different. It's a small country. We know each other. They know each other. So you have to, I would say that there is a way that you work. A management tool is mobilizing them from a place to place. You can control better when you know that you separated one from another, or you collected. I can give you, you know what? I'll give you an example, which I use mostly in my presentations. When I was the commissioner during the second Intifada, and within, I would say, 2 years, the number of terror inmates grew from about 500 to 3,500 inmates, and you have to, you could put some of them, the negative leaders, in solitary confinement, but you have, you know, you have cells for that, but you know, remember, at the same time, the penal inmates didn't stop working on or the offenders outside. So you have limited number of solitary confinement cells. At the end, you couldn't put everyone in that you need in a isolated cell. And that gives you an answer to what you have asked before. Yes, there are few that are being kept in solitary confinement 23 or 22 hours a day. we in the cell, getting out for a walk in the sun just by themselves without anyone else. It depends on their dangerousness level, on their risk assessment level. So there are even terror inmates or penal inmates, the heads of the organizations and people who are risky, they're being kept. Not many, but there are. So at that situation, I realized that there are more than 50, 70 negative leaders among them all around the prison. And I didn't have enough place to isolate them. So at one night, we decided to take a bus and collect, in a way, 50 worst leaders of these terror inmates, took them all together, took them from their, subordinates or colleagues or whatever you want to call it, and put them in a one wing at the south of the country, which called the X wing, meaning a very small 25 cells that they have, double bed and not double bed, bed one above the other.
Yeah,
So
bunk
if they
beds.
want to pray to, how you say it?
Bunk beds.
Okay, that's what you have said. And if they want to pray, they have to wait one by one. They cannot do it at the same time. Very small cells. So one time you deleted at once 50, I would say 50 influential leaders, because you took them from their, I would say, people. I wouldn't say subordinators or soldiers, because I hate that definition for terrorists. But you took them aside. They have left, a vacuum behind them, and you put them all in one wing. So they didn't have any subordinates. They could only debate between themselves who is more important than the other, who is higher. And then there was quiet, but not for long, because after a while, vacuum do not stay like that, and a new leader is growing up in these places. So mobilization was and still is in Israel one of the most important management tools, how to control and supervise what's going on. He could be sent to another prison. It will take him time, if at all, to become again a leader. And then if he raised some leadership options, you take him again and put him in another place. So mobilization is something very important. As for your question um, regarding the differentiation between Hamas and other organizations, it is also a management tool. I can remember from my time, we were trying to put some cracks among them. So they will be busy, because I would say most, it's obvious for every, inmate or prisoner, but mostly for the terror inmates. Keep them busy. Unless you'll keep them busy, they will keep you busy. So keep them busy, meaning they will have to be suspicious on each other. They don't have to, you have to manage the system in a way that there will be always cracks here, some suspects here. They will be asking for things. They will be always occupied with things, busy, because that will give you a kind of management, way, I would say calm way to manage them. This is one thing. Another thing is to be very strict with your reaction, meaning they should know what they are being demanded of, what are the demands that they have to obey. And if they do not obey, there is a sanction. The sanction has to be directly connected to what they have done. You don't get up in the morning and decide, no, now I'm going to show them who am I. No, but they should know that if they jeopardize security or rules or discipline of prison, they should be sanctioned. And when you are doing it in a consistent way that it is clearly transparent and they know what to expect, it calms the environment. They know that they are being behaved at the same way. Not this is the second. The third is meaning there isn't leaders in my eyes. Even though I said before we took the leaders, but we say they are all the same. It doesn't matter if you have been a leader outside, if you were, at the high level of the organization. For me, you are the same, and I don't give you any extra or not extra or a minimum requirement. It's the same. The conditions are the same for all of you. There isn't difference for me. So it minimizes your influence as a leader, because if you are the same as your colleague who were subordinated to you, it means that you don't have any status here. Um, what else I can say about that is training your staff. Training your staff to be very professional. Even though, again, you mentioned the states and the specific prison, the maximum security, those those war, the stuff over there is changing all the time. It's not the same stuff that grow with the inmates. Here in our system, you can find a major general on one side of the bars and a terror inmate on the other side of the bars that know each other for 20 years, 20, 25 years. So you have to be professional and fair and work according to the rules, both sides. Of course, the staff, of course, but it's something that you have always to handle the way that people are behaving, because we are human beings. The warden and the staff knows that inmate and speaks with him, and sometimes even drink coffee with him in a way, but they don't forget who is who and how you manage them, and you punish them when they needed to be punished. You shouldn't close your eyes even for you cannot even blink, let's say. You have to be very alert all the time. Yeah.
No, that's a very very sobering answer to trying to understand the differences between the systems in the states and in Israel, who are both
not
housing
even
security.
mentioning not even mentioning the offshore that the states have.
Gitmo, yeah,
Guantanamo,
of course.
Guantanamo, and we remember all the stories about some airplanes that were going from a place to place backward in 20 years ago. We don't have that. We have only inshore.
Yeah.
And one other difference, and that will be sound, I think, to our international people sometimes odd, is the difference between human rights and inmate rights in Israel versus the US. In Israel, by the law, you cannot search, for example, in the body. You cannot. You are not allowed. Even not asking you to open your mouth and look inside, not mentioning other places in your body. Versus the US, they do everything they want. They are allowed to make searches in the body, whatever, men, women, whoever, wherever. That's a major difference. Another difference is the right to apply to the Supreme Court. The first level is what we call here the mechozi, the second level, and the upper level is really the Supreme Court. Any inmate, doesn't matter if he is a terror inmate or penal inmate, has the right to apply against whatever he would like to, meaning he didn't get enough newspapers. He was not allowed to keep a thermos in his cell. He was not allowed to have, I don't know, more than 3 books in it, whatever. And you have to take him to court, each one to court, escorted. And then uh, it is a way of attrition of the system. It's a way for them to attrit the system, the correctional system as well as the judicial system. And in the state, it's not the same. So there are major differences that are being held between Israel and the states and other countries as well.
Most definitely. And like most things, a uniform code or definitions always go a long way. And as you know, having working on the International Correction and Prison Association, there is a need for international cooperation, definitions, and understanding of how systems work, and try to take best practices from one another and apply them and adapt them to your country and nation. And we haven't even touched on it yet, and so we'll get to it now before we let you go. We've had a very long conversation. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I do appreciate it very much. Is the whole coronavirus and how that now is affecting prison services in general, how that's affecting the inmates and the staff at the prisons. Um, we know that around the globe, I'm not too sure about the numbers here in Israel, but around the globe, inmates have been released from prisons, from jails, due to the coronavirus. Jails and prisons are a prime breeding ground for this disease because of the close proximity of inmates, hygiene issues that occur when sharing, obviously, bathrooms, showers, etc. Releasing inmates into the general population before they have completed their service uh, seems a little risky, seems scary. When you hear the numbers in California at one time in the middle of May, they had released 3,500 inmates. The Department of Correction by mid-May, Federal Department of Corrections had released 1,500. There was an uproar in the UK on one day. They had to release 450 inmates from a prison in the UK due to coronavirus. Now, obviously, that brings risks with it, but also keeping them in the prison with the medical condition of the coronavirus is also a big risk to the other inmates, to the prison system as a whole, and obviously the staff who go in and out and protect the public and the inmates on the inside. So I'm not here to pass judgment on any of these decisions. It's more trying to get a grasp and understand what the effects of these decisions are and how come they would take the drastic measure of releasing inmates back into the population.
I might surprise you saying that also in Israel, about 400 prisoners has been pre-released. Usually you release those that were close to their time to be released. You are not releasing, lifetimes, or even maybe lifetimes that he's on the end of his time. So this is something that happened all around the world. It is not that risky, even though people, the population always say, how come? They are risky. They are risky at the same way that they will be risky 2 months from now or 3 months from now, or not risky as they are now, and it will be in 2 or 3 months. So let's begin with that. Secondly, I would say that at the 2021 century, it's about time, or the 21st century, it's about time for us to think about more alternatives to incarceration and imprisonment, especially for those who are not risky really, but have to pay the price to the community, to society. So we spoke mostly on the terror inmates, so I was very, strict and that, but there is a different way of thinking regarding the penal inmates and the way the juveniles, women, and et cetera, et cetera. But this is also for a different discussion, I think. Regarding what you have said about coping or managing COVID-19 in correctional systems, we've heard around the world, not only on releases, but we've heard about riots, we have heard about um, fires. We have heard about getting the disease in prisons and really disasters around the world. I can tell you that in the Israel prison service, and I'm touching wood, yes, until now, there wasn't any kind of spread of the virus in the prisons. Why? First of all, they have released few of them, about 400, so they can, manage it in a better way. Secondly, they stopped all the furloughs that we have spoken about, which makes a lot of tension in the prisons, but it prevents them from getting infected outside among the society. They stopped the family visits as well. So from the same reason. They stopped the lawyers' visits, and they are doing it by, Zoom, privately, in privacy, everything, but not face to face. The new admitted, let's say, that are coming into prison are being kept isolated for 14 days. And then just after that, they are being assigned to a prison, to a wing with other inmates. The discussion with court for a long time has been via Zoom. Nowadays, partially they begin again, and I'm not sure that they will not get back to that way, to the system according to the situation now in Israel. And as for the staff, they separated the staff into capsules. So if one will be infected, the capsules will stay for 14 days, but there will be two other capsules that will make the shift. So there were management steps that has been taken that prevented catastrophe from happening in their system. It's not mine anymore, but in the Israeli prison system. I hope it will remain the same. There are no guarantees, as long as it's spreading out and staff members, getting in connection and interaction with their families, friends, whatever. And nowadays, it is all spread around the country. It's not as it has been at the first time that it was very focused. Now it's all spread around. So I assume that it's inevitable that something will happen. But I can tell you, and I even commented to the current commissioner, or it's not, he's not the commissioner, he's taking place of the commissioner for now. I commented to him and I wrote him and, WhatsApp, and I said, good for you. You are doing a great job, because I listen to what's happening around the world and it's totally different here. I hope it will remain the same.
I hope it remains the same as well. And before we let you go, I'd like to throw out a hypothetical scenario to you to better understand what steps or actions would need to be taken in this potential scenario. Um, what if a scenario were to occur where in one of the security wings of the prison where we house the terrorists or security prisoners were to be overrun by COVID-19? And by overrun, I mean several inmates are confirmed with the disease, thus meaning all that were with them or in contact with them by definition have been now exposed to the disease, both staff members and inmates. What would that scenario look like if all of a sudden in one of the wings where we have 6, 7, 8 prisoners even in a cell sometimes were to catch it? What type of scenario, what are the steps that would have to be taken, to mitigate that from spreading to the rest of the prison, but also to, as you mentioned, Israel's very high on the human rights of the inmates and will make sure that they are taken care of medically. So what does that look like from a medical perspective? What does it look like from a security perspective and prevention?
Let's say from the beginning that COVID-19 do not look at a terror inmate different from a penal inmate. So the risk is risk for everyone, and they will be taken care in the healthcare way, in the best way that they are being taken care all around, all the whole way. Meaning, if someone has to be hospitalized in a hospital, he will be hospitalized in a hospital. If there will be a need to open a specific, wing for those who are lightly ill, like people in the civilian population, they will be taken into a separate wing. They have done many preparation even for to separate a whole prison if there would be a need for that. So it it will not, surprise anyone if something will happen, and they have plans and programs for every scenario. They have made, plans for all the potential scenarios, and this is one of the obvious scenarios that might happen. So it has been taken care in their scenarios. If someone has to be in emergency, it will be in emergency place. There will be guards, not inside with him, I assume, but at the door, at the windows, whatever is needed. So keeping health and security will be remaining at the same time. It will be more challenging, of course, for the organization, but that's their job. That's what they have to do.
Most definitely. I really appreciate you taking the time and providing us with this really imperative, sobering conversation about the prison system here in Israel and internationally, and how we need to handle prisoners from different backgrounds, and especially in this COVID-19 era. It seems that the prison service that you were the commissioner of and have retired from has learned its lessons and done a very good job of dealing with this situation. You clearly left the prison services in great shape and handed it over in a great way. For all that are joining us late in the program, this has been a very interesting, great conversation with retired Lieutenant General Orit Adato. She is the associate. She is an associate at the International Institute for
It's
Counterterrorism,
enough.
and
Enough.
she enough. Well, no, everyone needs
Enough.
to know. It's important that they at least know that you are the former commissioner of the Israeli prison
Yeah,
services, and we really appreciate your time and your service, and thank you for this wonderful conversation.
thank you, Itai.
I really appreciate
Enjoy.
it. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.